Hey, watch out, welcome back. Okay, got the wheels back from the tyre shop this morning, and a couple of things I want to show you. First of all, with the rear, I've gone for a Michelin Pilot 2. This was on the recommendation of my mate Sean, who does the tyres for us. He said they're a great all-round tyre, and I've gone for a 190. Now, I know I mentioned that with these bikes, they come out of the factory with a 6-inch rear rim, and a 6-inch rim is fundamentally designed to have a 190 section tyre on it to give the right profile on the sidewall and to give a nice, lazy, predictable ride. And when people want to quicken up the steering on their bike, the first thing they do is put a narrower rear tyre. That makes it a little flatter, it stretches the tyre a little bit more, and it makes the general profile smaller, so the tyre drops in, or the bike drops into corners a little bit more freely. So I've gone with a 190 because I actually want to do the opposite. I want to slow this thing, I want to calm this bike down. The RSV Mille is a particularly feisty bike. It's Italian superbike in every way, proper thoroughbred, and the handling has always been just that little bit twitchy, and I kind of like that. It's okay, and I've done various things on the setup to calm it down. I've layered off the suspension, I've got a little bit less damping support so the bike's a little bit more supple, and I've lowered the rear suspension because on the RSV Mille they are height adjustable. So that's done. I've got it set where it is correct for me, and when the next chance I get an opportunity, there's a race tech guy who comes to one of our local shops once a year or so, and they'll set your bike up for you. They take your body weight, they set it up for you so that they set all your suspension up. You've got something like 14 separate different settings on this bike to make that setup for the aspect the way it rides. And all I've done is set them all to factory and gone a little bit softer on one or two of them. That's all. I've done nothing more than that, but you can do a lot more if you really get involved, and I'll do that another time. Right, I've got 190 for the back, and as I said, I've gone for that because according to all hearsay on all of the forums, the 190 tyres will give you a slower, more lazy handling. It's more stable at straight line speed, and as they say, they look better. And some of the guys you talk to say they're better for wheelies because they're more stable. So not that I do that, because I wouldn't do such dangerous things. Certainly not on the road, obviously. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to just talk about very quick is this. Now, this is the front tyre, and this is the correct orientation. I had a little bit of a to-fro with a guy about this. It was quite an interesting chat about it. He said, what do I think of the debate that these tyres face the wrong way? Because normally you'd think that a front tyre would face that way. It kind of looks right, but actually it's wrong. That's the correct way. So when you're looking at the bike, that's how the tyre should be, with the points facing towards it. Now the reason for it, I sort of thought, well, obviously to me there isn't an option anyway, because all these tyres have an arrow, a direction arrow on the side of them, and if you go against that because you think you know better, it's all very well and good, it may work for you, but if you have a collision or an accident or a problem, and an accident investigator gets hold of your bike, the first thing they're going to look at is the direction arrow is facing the wrong way. There's your argument. However much you might have thought it's right, go with what's written on the side of the tyre. But just aside from that, I asked my mate Sean, I said, what do you think of this? What do you think of this, that they say the tyre's the wrong way around? He said, yeah, on cars, race cars will put the tyres the other way. So they'll have the tread of the V facing forward. Things like Pirelli P0s that you put on your sports cars, they always face forward, front and rear. The reason for that is they just eject the water out the sides on a wet road. But on a bike, they lean over. And what Sean said to me, completely logical, and I totally understand it. The reason that they're orientated this way, with the V effectively looking like it's facing backwards, is because when you lean a bike over in a corner, you don't want the water ejected that way, do you? You actually want it ejected towards the middle of the tread. So at the bottom, it's being ejected out. So you're turning left, the wheel leans left, you want the water ejected to the right, away from you. Certainly not left into your path that you're going to ride onto. Logical, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Up here for thinking.
Get it.
Get it. That's why he's a clever man who runs a tyre shop and I'm a monkey boy in a garage. Right, okay, let's get them fitted. Stick the back one in first. Right, when you do any job that's going to take a day or so to get back to it, like this one, just things like this. That's the wheel spacer that goes on the right. That's the wheel spacer that goes in the left. I've put it back inside the carrier. So just put them back through the bike. I've had so many people take the trouble to send us an email in desperation that they've gone and taken the back end of their bike apart, they've come to put it all back in, and they've got the spacers mixed up and they don't know which goes which side, and they're not the same. So when you do anything like this, when you take any back end out and there's got spacers, just put them all back in, stick the axle back through, orientate all the spacers in the correct order, and then you won't put them back wrong, will you? Hang on, does it?
No.
Right, okay. Put that down there. Let's put this back in the wheel first. should go in there. Nice and homely seated. Spacer in place. And spacer in this side. Right, it's always a bit of a bun fight. Any back wheel in a motorcycle, because it's kind of two hands and never really wants to fit. And the reason I didn't take this chain guard off is rather cleverly, it's bolted on the inside, and when you put the wheel in, you then can't get a tool into the bolt to put it on, so it's bendy, so I just bend them out of the way. It's easier. Path of least resistance, brother. Right, the chain on. Right, just pop the chain on first. Get it as closely mounted as you can. You rotate backwards, it will lead the chain into place. There we are. So everything's leading. I'm just going to get some. So the idea is to get everything set in place before you start trying to wrestle the axle through. Now with your axle, people ask this quite a lot. All axles are different. This particular one has shoulders on it so it doesn't turn when you're doing the nut up, and that's your spacer there, which presses against the adjuster nut, so that literally just goes through as it is. So I'll come around that side of it. Right. Little piece of wood underneath the wheel, or whatever works. Stack of magazines, anything you got. Use what you have, dudes. Orientate that through. Right, don't slam this through, and if it stops against anything, don't for goodness sake start hitting it with tools, because an axle is meant to fit loosely with your hand. It won't need any more than that. Come over this side. Right. As soon as you see the axle emerge out this side, just double check your spacer there has not dropped out. This might be, if you've got different spacers, the time you have to lift that in place, but there we are. Right. That's your rear brake caliper mounting. And then finally, push it through. So before you go anywhere, it's important, come on this side again. I know you're working behind me on this, but there we go. There we go. Just get your everything there. So as much as you can, get everything all the way through before you come this side. There we go. Come around, Ben. And then outside on, followed by seating washer and the wheel nut. Now, in your bike, whatever your bike has, check the torque applied to your wheel and torque it up correctly. They vary, all bikes vary. 70 odd, 60, 70 foot-pounds is reasonably normal. Any more than that, you do risk crushing the bearings. I mean, there's a lot of conjecture about it. I spoke to a mechanic some years ago who said to me that he always puts 100 pounds in, 100 foot-pounds on a wheel nut, because then it will never come out and it will never get sued. Personally, that sounds like fear to me, because it's incorrect in the extreme. You should never really, in my opinion, put more than about 75 foot-pounds on a wheel nut. It's just a steel thread against the steel thread, and it doesn't matter what you do. You can only do it up so tight. There are bearings in there, and when it goes metal to metal to metal, you do it up to a certain torque, do it up to the correct torque, don't over torque it. A little bit extra is not correct. It's psychologically comforting to have that little bit extra, yeah, just a bit extra, then it won't come undone. Then snap, something goes bang, and then that's really annoying. So it's better to do it up to the correct torque, and then just put some marker paint on it. We know all about that, don't we? Right, while the dustmen are emptying the bins, I'm going to get the rest. But that's in. All I need to do is adjust it now. So we're coming back on the market. Combination of 10mm and 12mm. And I've got the bike set on the paddock stand, so the weight is on the bike, which is correct for setting the chain tension. I'm just going to bring that back. Okay, right, nearly there, got it almost done. Take the socket that does the wheel nut up and do the wheel nut up just loosely. Don't have it back right off, because nearly all swing arms, or rear fork as they refer to it in some books, when you undo the wheel nut, these two extremities, the ends, they will actually separate. Some swing arms, especially steel ones on Harleys, they're actually under pressure outwards. So bring them in as much as you can. You can still adjust the wheel back. You have these very effective, powerful little adjusters, and they'll push the wheel back. So when you adjust the wheel back, don't have the nut back right off, because that will give a false reading. When you do the wheel nut, do it up till it's kind of not wrist tight, but you know, some pressure on it is what I'm saying. So that when you adjust back, it's all under a little bit of tension, and it's not going to slide and move around. It's going to stay where you set it. So here we are on this particular bike. You see inside there. You see inside there?
Yep.
Little wheel markers in there, and I hear a lot of conjecture about what you should and shouldn't do, and you shouldn't use these because they're not accurate. Well, if they're not accurate, why did the factory put them there? They are accurate. It's just that sometimes between two marks either side, it's not easy to get them perfect. If you're really anal about it, you can use a laser wheel aligner along the top of your chain, and that will tell you whether it's absolutely dead straight. You can even use a straight edge on the outside of the wheel, forward the bike. There's loads of methods of doing it. Personally, I always trust these, and my bikes ride fine. It's not a problem. Right, so that's halfway through the 6th adjuster. Put it on the other side, same again, and then do up the little lock nuts. And all I'll do is just pop that in there for a minute. I've seen people ride their bikes around with these lock nuts backed off. It is important that they must be done up, and do them up. So we set that. We hold still on the adjuster, then do the lock nut up whilst holding the adjuster still, so that it doesn't adjust itself. There we are. I don't have to wind them up too much, but that's enough. And then just check the tension finally, put some weight on the bike, and then check the tension. That's given me at least an inch to an inch and a half. And here on the bike it says 25mm for this particular bike. Say 25mm, that's the adjustment at the center of the chain. So here, with weight on the machine, always with weight on the machine. And that's correct. If you're going to err on the side of tight or loose, always err on the side of loose, because loose is always better than overly tight. Now finally, there's like the news, isn't it? And finally, always make sure you do your rear wheel up to the correct torque that is in your manual. So whatever you choose to use, make sure you do. And what should we go with? A nice bit of orange today. Yeah, orange.
Tangerine Dream.
Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Is that the name of a bike? A little bit on the top there, a little bit on there. There you go. Ain't hard, is it? And that won't go anywhere, it'll stay there. And of course when you want to change it, just chip it off. Alright, finally, caliper. Put the brake caliper back in place. Brake caliper bolts. Now, always copper slip, brake caliper bolts. Again, I've been asked this question a few times, why copper slip and not ordinary grease? Well, the reason for that's very simple. Copper slip is heat resistant. It doesn't melt. It stays solid. If you take a blow lamp and you get some copper slip and just melt it, you'll see, or even with your lighter, you see it doesn't run, doesn't melt and turn into oil and dribble like grease does. It just turns into a waxy porridge, kind of, it sort of bakes. So in that sense, it's quite safe. And it doesn't run onto the brakes. So you use grease in the first place, any form of grease, because these bolts get a lot of road crud, salt, grit, brake dust, and that causes them to seize in place. And obviously that's no good, especially when it comes to getting them out. They're in an aluminium thread, and the reaction between steel and aluminium, we know about that, and that effectively seizes them up. So you need some sort of grease in a brake caliper mounting bolt that stops it from staying in there too long, or makes it possible to get it out in the future. But don't use regular grease, because that will melt, it will run, turn into oil, and effectively run onto your brakes and make them ineffective, which is quite dangerous. So always use copper slip, so that doesn't go anywhere, or anti-seize, one of these other compounds. Alright, and for goodness sake, don't use Loctite. Not unless you don't want them ever to come out ever again, because the heat on Loctite can bake it so much it never comes undone. Right, brakes, pump, brake pedal. Make sure that the pads come out as far as they need to, and before we go anywhere, before I take this even on a test ride, I'm going to check every single fastener again before I ride it or go anywhere on it. So that's the rear for now. Let's get the front stuck in. Same process really. I put all this stuff back on in order last night. So that's the wheel spacer that goes that side. There we are. Annoying that one. I should take the mudguard off. In these situations, always take your mudguard off. There we go.
It's because of that lip on the front there.
That lip? Yeah. The one that stops the bike rolling off the front of the bench? Yeah, absolutely. Pain in the arse, aren't they? Let's pop them through. Again, through this side, that's adrift and loose. So when you pop through, just make sure you don't push it out. And there we are. Now these tube type axles are a stainless steel tube, very strong, extremely strong, but again the thread in the end of them is a fine thread, so don't go beating it in, just use common sense like that. Wiggle it through till the last noggins, and through here then you've got a little bit of thread you can get hold of, and you've not tripped this thread on anything. Once the thread is clear, you know that everything's lined up, and you can gently, with a rubber mallet only, tap it through. Now this is another situation very much like the Triumph situation, where the spacers all work together. You don't connect any of these up until such time as the axle is fully through. So put the wheel nut on this side. Have you got that going on? Mm-hmm. Okay. Washer in place first. Always a washer. Pop the axle in place. Doesn't need anything on it. If you want to put a tiny bit of copper slip on it, you can, but it's not something that gets hot, and they never seem to seize on, so they're fine. But if you live in a cruddy environment, perhaps it's winter, then it doesn't hurt to do so. Wrong one. There it is. Okay, so in this instance, what we're trying to do now is, it's a pull-through axle. Okay, the wheel spacers themselves are correct. It's what you have to do is pull the axle through as far as you can this way with the means of turning the wheel nut, and that will seat everything. So keep an eye on it that side, that it doesn't turn. If it does turn, you've got two notches there to hold it still. You don't normally need to. There we are. Now as soon as that turns, what you've done is you've squeezed all the bearings and spacers all into one piece so that the wheel is correctly spaced. The wheel is, with this spacer this side and that one that side, everything is worked out cleverly by the factory that it works. It all lines up. That wheel is dead in the centre. So if you do up these pinch bolts before you pull that axle together, all you're going to do is, if you do those up and then you draw the axle in, you're going to pull that fork in. So leave these pinch bolts at the bottom of the fork leg alone until you've done up the wheel nut to a level. So just do it up until in this side it turns. Once you're getting a bit of turnage in the end like that, you know that the axle itself is all the way through, all the spacers are butted up shoulder to shoulder, and everything's in place, and that axle is at its shortest. At that point, then do up the little pinch bolts, because you can't do that axle up any tighter because this is spinning. So all you do is spin these up tight, and they don't need much. Again, if it's your bike, it may not be an Aprilia, it may be a Kawasaki, whatever. If you've got this set up, just use the torque settings in your book. And all torque settings are adjusted, or, sorry, rephrase that, all torque settings are rated on a lubricated thread. So put some copper slip or grease on that thread and decide which of the two that you feel is correct by working out whether it gets hot or not. Right, I get asked that question all the time. When to use copper slip, when to use grease. To be honest, it's never wrong to use copper slip. You can use copper slip in any situation. It is never wrong. It is never inappropriate. Copper slip will never be a mistake. It is always serviceable for every single fastener. It's just that grease isn't. Regular ordinary grease will melt under heat, so therefore only use it in applications where either it doesn't matter if it melts or it gets hot, or it doesn't get hot, such as frame bolts, things like that. Personally, in the end, I just use copper slip on everything. So, kind of a default. Right, there we are. I've just nipped those up to the same. Just a quick final word on these. When you get two of something like this doing up one piece, it's the same on the bottom yoke as well. When you get two bolts doing up one clamp, do them up again, so bounce between them. 1, 2, 1, 2. Keep checking one after the other, because you tighten one up, the other goes loose. So you tighten that one up and it pinches the whole thing in and the other one goes loose. So just keep going, nip, 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 nip until they're both about the same, and then check them with a torque wrench, one click. Right, now calipers, let's put the brake calipers on. Tie them up out of the way, simplest way to do it, and not so likely to scratch the fairing or stress the hoses as they're all bouncing around too much. Alright, check the pads in this option. We've got blue, I don't know what blue means, someone will tell me now. I've got blue pads in there. Blue's pretty, like copper slip. You can use the grey anti-seize compound, that stuff's perfectly alright. Any fit for purpose product, just prep these while they're on the bench. It doesn't need much, just a little bit to ease the thread. There we go. I love this hard stuff rather than the grease. And I always get asked the same question, so there what it is. Loctite C5A anti-seize copper. Right. So when people say, do I use copper slip or anti-seize? It's the same thing. Copper slip is an anti-seize compound. Again, these will have a torque setting, so torque them up correctly. And no, you aren't seeing me do it because I'm rushing through this to show you the job. And again, what I'll do at the end of this job, I'll go around all these fasteners with a torque wrench. I may wing it on things like the Harley or the General because it's not a performance bike, but this is a performance bike, a high performance machine, so I will torque all these fasteners, wheel nut, brake calipers, axle nuts. These I'll torque them all up to their correct torque value at the end when I'm finished. Right, let's get that on in. Right, always pump your brakes out. Who hasn't been there? Eh? Take your calipers off, put them back on, and then go up the road for a road test. And you get to that first junction, nothing, and you'll find, there we are, super. Right, there's a little bit of hiss on there, and the reason for that is that, where is it? Is that the old bobbins are a bit, the bobbins here are a bit seized up. So these are not moving freely as they should, which is the next job. And all you do, let me just quickly get a relevant spanner. That's the one. Relevant spanner. That's the one. Right. So I think I've done a whole video on this. These are your brake bobbins, and quite simply, they are a separate little thingy bob that joins the rotor to the caliper. And they've got a little spring in the back, but you get brake dust and weather corrosion in there. Simple. And if you just put, all I've got there is a little nut and bolt that fit together, nice big and short enough to work. Bolt it through. Simple as that. Spanner to hold the back, and then spin the front. Just tighten that up. Now, as you can see, that's turning the bobbin. And that will make sure the bobbin is free. Now I haven't today, currently, currently I haven't got any brake cleaner, so I'm going to get some and then do the whole lot, but that's the process. When you spin that, turn it around like that, and spray brake cleaner on there, and it will wash out any crud and salt. Good in the winter to do that, and do all of them, and that will make sure that they stay nice and mobile. Some bikes, yes, we've been told, many of you have said, you haven't got holes in these. Some of these come this solid. In that case, there's precious little you can do about it, I'm afraid. But those, if you have got a hole in your brake disc bobbins, you can use this method of a big fat nut and bolt that goes through the centre, nip it up, and then as you turn it with the ratchet, it rotates that. Spray it with brake cleaner at the same time. And no, you do not put lubricant of any description on there, not even copper slip. I know people have said to me, I always do, and it's fine. Well, you do what you like. Personally, I don't like hospital food. tried it, it's rubbish. Okay, so there we are. Front wheel's got a little bit of bind there, but I'm going to take it for a test ride and check how that is. If it is too much, then I might take those calipers and clean them all out in the normal way. That's it. Should we get it off the bench, Pen?
Yep.
That's everything connected. Oh, I've forgotten anything. Sometimes it seems too easy. There we go. Oh yeah, wheel nut. Right. Finally, there was something. Okay, and that's wheel nut. In this instance, I've done up these bolts and the ones the other side, and that physically holds the axle very, very still. So then all I need to do is come in and put the right torque on the wheel nut itself. Very fine thread and a very shallow nut, so it really doesn't need masses. I don't know the torque on this because I haven't looked it up. If I did, I guess it would probably be in the region of about 55 to maybe 70, I'm guessing. So please don't take that as correct, and I'm just going to marker that for a minute, which will remind me to have a look at it. And I'm going to get this afternoon, so off video when we're finished, I'm just going to get onto the net because I haven't got a manual for this yet. And invariably on the fantastic Aprilia forums, there are some incredible giving contributors who will post up PDFs of their manual, and I can read down on the net all the torque settings for the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 12, 14, 15 or 16 fasteners that I've undone and done back up again. And when I've got all those torque values, I'll come in, take the torque wrench, and I'll click the whole thing, make sure it's all correct before I take it for a test ride. And if Penny shows you what's happening today out there, that's why we're not going for a test ride.
It's pouring.
It is bediddling down. And obviously, I'm not shy, I don't care about getting this wet, but who doesn't know? Hands up at the back what we're going to say next. Brand new tyres, wet roads, on a feisty bike, it's just not going to happen. I'll take these out on a dry day when it's reasonably mild, and I can scrub them in properly, get them to a reasonable level, and then use sandpaper or whatever to take the edges off, so nice and safe to use. There you go, part 2, finished, done, tyres fitted, RS3 Mille Aprilia. Right, see you next time.